Hello, my name is Josh Haynie, Senior Vice President of Business Development here at Freeman. Today I'm here in our DC broadcast studio with two really special guests for this edition of Inside Live. Kirsten Olean, Director of Meetings at the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation and the current chair for PCMA, and Mark Bogdansky, Vice President of Meetings and Events at Auto Care Association, co-owners of the Apex Trade Show and the current chair of MATSO. And we're all fully vaccinated, so it is really, really good to be sitting here together in person. Thanks for being here. We're excited to have you both here today to talk about your experiences over the last year, how your organizations are shaping your strategy, and what's ahead for 2021 and beyond. Before we dive in, can each of you give a quick introduction for anyone at home who doesn't know you and a little bit about your organizations and the upcoming events you have planned? Kirsten, we'll start with you.
So I'm Kirsten Olean. I'm with the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, Director of Meetings there. I've spent my entire career in the medical and scientific field. And our largest meeting is the North American Cystic Fibrosis Conference. It is a conference for clinicians and researchers who are involved in CF care or involved in research looking for a cure for cystic fibrosis. So we meet in the fall, and we are planning a live meeting face-to-face in San Antonio this year, and with a hybrid component, with a virtual component for those who can't yet travel.
Yep, that's great, and we'll talk about that. Mark?
Yeah, so I'm with the Auto Care Association. We represent everything that keeps your car running after you pull it off the lot, from the manufacturers who make the parts down to the shops who actually put them in that you go to when your car breaks down. And our trade show is in the first week of November in Las Vegas. And like Kirsten, like everybody else, we were virtual last year, but we're actually going to be in person this year in November and doing a virtual option later on afterwards.
That's great. And so pulling from those experiences with virtual and knowing that incorporating digital into event strategy will be crucial moving forward, tell me about your business approach for hybrid events. And we'll start with you, Mark.
Yeah, so one of the things we learned, we're a very trade show heavy show. And one of the things that we learned very early on from everybody is that virtual trade shows are not all that successful. And so we really veered away from that last year when we did our virtual event, and we focused more on educating the one segment of our population that really was not being satisfied with any other virtual events. And so we had a lot of education. It was more of a conference style approach than we've typically done, and it was successful. And so as we look to do something virtually, probably 4, 5, 6 months after our trade show this year, it'll be again focused on the education, whereas the trade show in person is going to be the trade show focus, and it's going to be in person.
So an opportunity to really strengthen something that could use improvement in the live through the virtual and carrying that forward. That's great. Kirsten, same question.
Yeah, so just putting my PCMA hat on for a minute, yes. We definitely are talking about in the industry how virtual is here to stay. And it wasn't, just a temporary stopping point for us during the pandemic. It was certainly how many of us survived through our events that way. But now we've exposed our audiences to that. We've brought new audiences into the mix. And so there's an expectation that we're going to continue reaching those. So I think that hybrid is here to stay. But I think one thing one nuance about that is that we have to really think about our events and what makes sense for them, right? So some events maybe make sense to continue being virtual. Others are going to be like big trade shows, need to be back face to face, and sometimes hybrid's going to be the right solution too. So I think we have to be strategic in our event design and not just be saying everything has to be hybrid. We have to really think about the audience and the intent and the outcomes for the event. We're in a unique position because our event is really focused on the education and the content piece, and our community is very tight-knit, and they want to be together. So I always liken them to people in the industry. I say it's like PCMA. Like we go to PCMA because we want to see each other, we want to be together, and our group is the same way. Pretty much everyone who works in the CF space comes to our meeting already. So we didn't actually really expand our audience that dramatically when we had a virtual event because we were capturing the same people who usually come to the meeting. That being said, there are people who can't come, and of course we will reach them through a virtual audience. We have a unique situation in that although our meeting is scientific and medical and targeted towards that audience, we have the CF community, which is people with cystic fibrosis and their families and their caregivers that are very interested in what's being talked about at the meeting, and they can't physically attend the meeting because of infection control policy, but they want access to the meeting. So they've had the advantage of having full access last year when we were completely virtual, equal access to everyone else. This year they'll obviously be able to participate in the virtual meeting again, but we are now starting to think strategically about what that looks like moving forward. How do we design a virtual experience for that audience in particular that marries very nicely with NACFC and gives them the content they need out of NACF, but not necessarily the way we're doing it now, which is live streaming, most of our major events.
So I would add on also, one thing you mentioned is new audiences, right? And being able to reach new audiences. That's one of the things that we learned also, is that we were able to use our virtual event as almost like a marketing tool for our trade show coming back. And it allows us to get into new audiences. And if it's not a new audience, it's a new group of people that didn't necessarily know about our show or weren't able to come to our show. And so the response has been that we did something virtual last year. We gave them a little piece, a little taste, and now they can't wait to come to the in-person event. So I think that's where, like you said, hybrid's not going anywhere, virtual's not going anywhere. For us, on the large trade show side, that's where we really see the advantage, is it gives people the opportunity to get a little bit of a taste, a little bit of FOMO, and then make sure that they're coming, the following year.
Yeah.
That's great. So while on the topic of hybrid, we're all sort of dipping our toe in the water on hybrid. What do you see to be the big challenges for hybrid, and how do you intend to tackle them? And Mark, we'll start with you this time.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, for us, the biggest challenge is just the trade show side of it.
Yeah.
The commerce portion of the trade show, and not necessarily the education, is just a huge challenge. The buyers aren't engaging as well. The vendors and the exhibitors aren't getting the ROI they need out of it. And everybody just wants to get back and see everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the biggest thing. Everybody just wants to be able to see the people they know, meet new people, honestly have a drink with people they know. They want to be able to celebrate the fact that they've gotten through this together. That's not going to go away. And the whole commerce side of things is really the biggest challenge on the hybrid for us.
Yeah. And so hybrid for you, Kirsten, what do you see the big challenges to be, and how do you intend to take them on?
Well, I think sort of speaking about associations broadly, one of the biggest challenges in hosting hybrid events is the cost. It's very expensive to host both a face-to-face and a virtual event. We're fortunate to be in a financial position to be able to do that. That's a decision we made because our meeting is mission critical. It's also, for us, not a big revenue generator, so we don't have the same pressures that other organizations have. I think the thing that keeps me up at night about a hybrid event is that all of our speakers will not be there in person, and we are strongly encouraging them to come in person, but some will not. So thinking about having 12 concurrent sessions with some speakers on stage and some speakers being remoted in, and then also live streaming that session out to the virtual audience, there's a lot that could go wrong there, right? I mean, there's so many technical and logistical issues we could run into. We're actually seeing so far really good results on speakers coming in person, which is easing that anxiety a little bit. And I think the other big challenge is, in making sure that we are creating a positive experience for both audiences. And we've made a really deliberate decision that the in-person is the in-person and the virtual is the virtual. Now, if you attend the in-person meeting, you will have access to the virtual platform, so you can go back and watch content as it's live for 60 days or so after the meeting. But we are creating social events for the virtual audience. We're creating programming just for them, and we're allowing them to network with each other. And the same is going to happen at the in-person. So there's experiences that both audiences are having that the others won't. But a lot of the main content will be accessible to everyone in live time. They'll be able to ask questions, whatever, no matter where they are. So it's really thinking about those two audiences. We can't just pick up our face-to-face and make it virtual. That just doesn't work.
Well, if we learned anything this year, it's that simply doesn't work. So getting back to live events, what are you most excited about getting back to live? And then I'll remind you at the end, but then I want to know what you think the biggest challenge will be. And Mark, we'll start with you.
I mean, most excited about everybody, just our industry is, again, they're just dying to get back together. And I think that's the thing we're most excited about, is just seeing everybody's reaction of getting back together. Everybody at this point is saying, we can't wait to get there. We can't wait to be there. Can't wait to see everybody we know. I mean, that's really the biggest thing for us right now.
And then what do you think the biggest challenge will be?
Providing them an experience that reminds them of why they need to come to face-to-face events.
Yeah.
I think, look, we were very lucky, probably a lot like healthcare, but we were very lucky in that our industry was deemed essential early on. And so our industry, other than a few months when everything first started, our industry has done pretty well. And it's really important at this point to remind everybody why it's important that they come to the face-to-face event every year and not just plan on doing things the way they did it in the past. So while there's a lot of excitement about getting to see everybody again, I think proving them the ROI on both the attendee and the exhibitor side. We always talk about ROI on the exhibitor side. I think there's a lot of ROI that's going to need to be proven for the attendees now because they can get a lot of what they've gotten in the past virtually. And so we have to prove to them why they need to start coming back to these face-to-face events.
Yeah, and even you all provided some of that content virtually through your programs, right? So they've become comfortable with that. So
and we're going to be providing some of that on site. We're going to be providing it virtually, but it's more than just content. It's the overall experience, and it's the experience on the show floor, and it's the experience in other places, and just things that they aren't going to be able to get virtually, whether it's networking or whatever it is.
And Apex is a show where people go to kick the tires, like quite literally.
literally.
Kirsten, how about for you? What are you most excited about?
Yeah, I think it's very similar. I mean, I'm just excited to be in a building with a few thousand people.
This is exciting, right?
Yeah, this is exciting. To be in a building with a few thousand people, to have my feet hurt terribly at the end of the day. I mean, just to have all that experience from the organizer side, but really just I know how excited our community is about being able to come and be together. So really excited about that. And, I think virtual was a good stopgap and it enabled us to get the content out, but the meetings are so much more than the content. It's really about finding your next collaborator, connecting with people who are working on the same things that you are. It really does advance the care and the research to be able to be together and have those conversations. Yes. So we're really focusing quite a bit on making sure we're providing space for that, right? We're just expecting people to plop down a lot more frequently someplace to have a conversation. So we're trying to make sure we build that in. And we are also really taking the approach of, our folks are healthcare workers and they got through this, very difficult time. We want to celebrate that. We want to celebrate that we're back together. We want to celebrate that they survived this year and did an incredible job caring for CF patients, and also use it as an opportunity to express our gratitude to our CF Care Center teams and what they did for people with cystic fibrosis over the last year. So I'm anticipating it being a very joyful reunion, and I think that's going to be really fun.
I think that's going to be most shows coming out of this. The word reunion, we're using the word homecoming. Those, you're going to see that as the most common thread on everything moving forward for the next year and a half, because everybody's just going to be so excited about being able to celebrate that they got through all of this together.
Yeah, I think we've been using the exact same words, talking about homecoming, welcome home, reunion. Yeah, and you asked about the challenges, and I think the biggest challenge is just trying to plan now for a meeting in September and not knowing what the regulations and requirements are going to be. We keep getting asked, are you going to require masks? Are you going to require this? Well, we don't know. We don't know what CDC is going to be. I mean, they just made a huge change yesterday with the mask mandate. And so, navigating that, and all of the facilities are still in the place of 6-foot distancing and temperature checks and mask mandates, and they likely won't be there by September. And so trying to plan for what we want to do in September, knowing where regulations are now, that's really challenging.
That's a challenge we're seeing across everything. Mark, I imagine you're seeing that.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting the same questions. What are you going to do? We're lucky we're a little bit later. We're about 6 months from now when we're able to say, okay, we'll know in a few months, but it's the same thing, we're all planners, right? And we all want to be able to plan now. And with everything changing every day, every hour, not being able to say, okay, here's what our actual guidelines and plan is going to be. It's very challenging for us as planners to be able to
when you don't know what you don't know.
Right,
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And Kirsten, you touched on this, on the way you were going to sort of design the experience for more plop-down areas. So a question, and we'll start with you. With this back to in-person after more than a year out, how do you plan on using live to innovate the experience? Anything you can share with us?
Yeah, so we're sort of taking this opportunity to say, we know we're going to have a smaller audience, and it's a good chance for us to beta test some things, right, and pilot some things. So things we've wanted to do, some more innovative content formats that are less formal and smaller group discussions. We're completely changing up the floor plan of our poster hall, scientific meeting, very traditional, still paper posters. But we're changing up the format of that to create more discussion areas and things around it, and to make it a more unique experience for people. We're really thinking about even how we design our plenary session, right? And we talked about this celebration and the gratitude. Like, how do we build that moment into our first plenary session and weave it throughout the event? We're doing beacon technology for the first time this year. Even though it's a smaller group, it gives us a chance to pilot test it. We're not printing a final program because we're not going to have everybody there in person, and we're hoping that will just continue after this year. So I'm really using this year as an excuse to try new things on a smaller group, and also sunset some things that maybe we wanted to do anyway, and we can use this hybrid format as an excuse to do that. So we're bearing a lot of both innovation and sunsetting into the unique situation we're in.
It seems like an ideal forum to sort of test and learn on some of these things. How about you, Mark? What innovation you all?
Yeah, for us, it goes back to creating a few new experiences for the attendees that we haven't had before. For instance, we're building out an actual shop with 8 bays where you can actually work on cars right on the show floor. And it gives us the chance to do something different, but it's a reason for people to come. We're not doing the hybrid thing. I love what you're doing as far as, sunsetting the things you really got to get rid of and being able to innovate. Where we're only doing the in-person right now, it's really giving us an opportunity to create those experiences that the attendees are going to absolutely want to have, and for the reasons for them to have to come, whether it's offering more training sessions than we ever have in the past, or doing something interactive like this shop that we're building and things like that.
Yeah, and then you said, was it 6 months after you have the bolt-on digital component?
Yeah, so the plan now is for about 5 months after the show, we're going to be doing a virtual event that'll be very education-focused and content-focused. We're not going to do the trade show. It's going to be a lot more of the training.
Yep.
So a lot like healthcare, where healthcare is a little bit different because there are CEUs involved. Our shop technicians constantly need to learn, right? Every new car has new things on it they need to learn so that they can work on them when they get to their shop. So we can provide that education both on site and then later on, 6 months later, to be able to offer new sessions about whatever the latest things there are in cars that they need to know.
Yeah, I can imagine that it's not just a shop anymore. You got to be a technologist to work on these cars. So
it's a computer lab. Yeah, it's a computer lab. I mean, every car now is essentially running on a computer.
Yeah.
So the people who are working on the cars that used to know, just how to change a muffler, that doesn't work anymore. It's all very computerized, and so there's a lot they have to learn. There's a lot the shops need to learn to evolve into that. And there's every year, every new model brings new challenges, and whether it's hybrid cars as opposed to the regular combustible engine cars, there's just always new challenges that we can educate our folks on.
That's great, and you're providing the forum for it. So all that being said, why are events and experiences such an important part of your overall marketing plans?
I mean, for us, aside from the revenue aspect, which is obviously huge for our association, and as an association, it's not just for our association making money, it's provide us to be able to pay back to the industry with everything else that we're doing, right? We're always on Capitol Hill. There's a ton of things going on right now in our industry that needs a lot of lobbying efforts. So, there's a lot of revenue side to that. But the other part is, again, the homecoming reunion, give everybody a chance to get together and see each other again. And, there are a lot of regional events in our industry, but there's no real good, we're the one really good national program every year where everybody around the country and around the world get to come together. And there's nothing else like that exists.
Yeah, I think for us, this meeting, and it's interesting because of everything we've been through as an industry in the last year plus, we've talked a lot about the impact on your side of the equation, right? How it's influenced, how it has impacted our suppliers, because there just haven't been these face-to-face events. But we don't really talk about the sort of demand side and what the impact has been on the organization's missions. So like for us, we really believe that the science did not accelerate as quickly because we didn't meet in person last year, right? So for us, our event really is the premier meeting and cystic fibrosis research and care. It is critical to improving the care for people with CF and towards it moving the research closer to a cure. And yes, those things continue to happen when we don't meet in person, but when we meet in person, they happen faster. Yeah. And fast is important when you're trying to save lives. So I don't think we think of our event as much as part of a marketing strategy. We think of it really more as absolutely mission critical to keep the science moving forward.
If that's not a reason to have a face-to-face event, I don't know
what it is. Right, exactly.
Yeah, we have those of us who get to work with Kirsten on NACFC, say that for us, we take such great pride in being able to help design the experience in which this forum will be created for these scientists to come together and accelerate cures. It's our feel good for sure.
Yeah.
So we're talking about audience. Let's talk a little more about audience. How do you think you'll change the attendee experience to ensure they see the value of attending in person? Like, what parts do you think will stay the same as before, and what parts might be a little bit different?
I mean, I'm interested, at least this year in particular, I think a lot of the after the show closes, parties and dinners that everybody was used to going to are going to change this year.
Yeah.
You know, I think for a couple of reasons. First of all, I think companies are trying to cut back a little bit on what they're spending. And also, I think people are still going to be a little bit reticent, there's that word, to see what exactly, you know, they're able to do, you know, and as far as, you know, do we want to rent out a big restaurant and have a big party or not, and things like that. So that's not necessarily something we're doing, but just the overall attendee experience. I think they have to plan on it being a little bit different than it normally would be. You know, normally the first night after the show closes, people are bouncing from party to party to party. I have a feeling that, at least for this year, that's going to be a little bit different.
Yeah.
You know, on our side, again, we talked a little bit about how we're extending experiences. I think other than that, it's going to be very similar. You know,
Yeah.
It's a trade show, might have wider aisles and things like that. You might have people wearing masks, which will be a little bit different, but it's a trade show, and that's really what they're looking for, and it's going to be very similar.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I've mentioned this before, but we don't have, I don't think we have to work particularly hard to convince people to come in person to our meeting, because they want to be there. It's their community. It's a you know, a very tight-knit community, small community, and so they want to come and be in person. So I think we're not maybe as concerned about, like, how do we retain and get them to come to the meeting in person as opposed to participating virtually.
Right.
But like I said, what we're trying to think about in terms of how we design the meeting is what their experience is going to be like. Probably their first major meeting, you know, that they're going to after coming out of this pandemic. What are people's comfort levels going to be? You know, we're not doing 6-foot distancing, but we're doing what we call psychological distancing. Give people just a little bit of elbow room so they're not sitting on top of each other, and trying to be sensitive to all of those things. And then just create all those opportunities for them to connect and be together. And again, try some new formats. I mean, there are things happening at our face-to-face meeting that are not being shared with the virtual audience. And there's a lot of good content and a lot of good experiences that are going to happen at the face-to-face meeting that we're not even recording them, right? So if you're not there, you're not participating in those. And I think, you know, just that alone is you know, a draw to be there, because they don't want to miss out on any of the content.
Yeah.
I think the psychological distancing thing is something that it could stay long-term also that people are really appreciating, right? Like,
Yeah. Can we get convention centers to stop ganging those chairs, right?
Exactly.
So that people have a little bit of elbow room, because they're going to leave a chair in between them anyway.
Exactly.
We know that they are, so yeah.
And I'll start with you on Mark, because I know that how important the exhibitor component, what a large piece of Apex that is. But have you created any new sponsorship or exhibiting opportunities to support maybe the changing needs of exhibitors through this time period?
Yeah, you know, so aside from the experiences that we're building, which are all exhibitor sourced, and sponsor sourced, we're just trying to, and this was starting even before the pandemic, honestly, you know, everybody's getting more and more data centric, right? And they want to be able to find the audience and the niche that they need. One of the things we're really working on is finding more sponsorships that allow companies to dig in on the exact audience that they want. You know, we have 50,000 buyers at our show, but most companies aren't trying to attract 50,000 people. They're trying to attract a segment of that. And so we're coming up with sponsorships that'll really help people find an area. So we have a tire section at our show, like you were saying, kicking the tires, right? We have a tire section in our show that for the first time we're gonna allow a company to sponsor. And as part of that, they're actually gonna know, they're gonna get a list of everybody who came in and learned about things going on in the tire section, because they want that data. They care about the tire section. Things like that, you know, I think, but a lot of that was even done pre-pandemic because people are just getting more and more into data. I think beacons are great. I've used beacons in the past, other stuff. It's a little bit, our show's a little bit too big to be able to do the beacon stuff, but I think beacons are a great way to be able to provide some significant sponsor and exhibitor ROI on things also.
Yeah, no, I think that idea of leveraging data in order to sort of personalize and fine tune and target the right people with the right audience.
Especially, I will say also, especially this year where it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality. You know, we don't know exactly that we're going to get the same 50,000 buyers. I don't think we are, you know, the first year out. But if the major buyers are coming from the companies, which is what we're hearing, like we might not send 5 people, we might send 3 people, but it's the 3 top people instead of like 1 top person and 4 junior people. And so if those people are coming and we're getting the quality, that's really what people care about right now more than anything else.
Same question to you, Kirsten.
Yeah, I think it's a tricky year, right? This sort of first year back, because what they care about, and to your point, is the people, and is it the right people? And it's not going to be the same experience as what they're used to, because we're not going to have a full audience. We are having a little bit of a virtual presence for exhibitors, but it's really kind of just a formality, right? If you're an exhibitor, you're going to get up on the Freeman's platform, and you're going to have your logo and stuff there. But we're not building out these really extensive virtual profiles for them. But we are including it in so that the virtual audience can be reached. But we're taking a more a la carte approach. So we've always had these like big sponsorship packages, and they include this, that, and the other thing. And now we're saying, here's all the things that you can purchase from us, and you can create kind of your own experience. And if it adds up to X number of level, then you become that level sponsor, so that they can really design an experience that they want for themselves and what they think is going to be the best ROI for their company, rather than just giving them this pre-package, which is where I think most sponsorship packages were going anyway. But we feel it's really important this year because they're really trying to consider where they're spending their money, what's going to be the most ROI for them with the smaller audience there in person.
Yeah, for sure. And you touched on this with psychological distancing, which I told you when you said that term to me for the first time a few weeks ago. I'm stealing that. It's mine.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah. So we couldn't have this conversation without talking about health and safety. So last and certainly not least, how are you promoting health and safety, and what are you going to do to make attendees and exhibitors feel comfortable? And we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I think as we mentioned earlier, this is one of the tricky things, right? We know what the rules are right now, but what are the rules going to be in September? And I think you said in November, it's just going to continue to evolve. So we are asking our attendees to sign a waiver of liability related to COVID. We are strongly encouraging people to be vaccinated if they're coming to the meeting. So we debated it quite a bit. We decided not to require it, in part because we can't guarantee that everyone in the building is vaccinated, right? So we didn't want to create a false sense of security, but we are strongly encouraging people to be vaccinated. And we're saying, if you're not, we have this great virtual option that you can participate in, and we encourage you to do that. And, with us being a primarily clinician audience, most of our folks have been vaccinated for months, so we do anticipate that most people there will be vaccinated. We, and we're working with the center right now about what can we do in the building in September, because we don't want a 6-foot distance, and we don't want to do some of these other things, and so what is allowable. And we've gone sort of the generic of, we plan to hold our meeting in accordance with CDC guidelines, and if you're coming to our meeting, you agree to comply with whatever those guidelines are at the time. And that gives us at least a baseline. We could choose to be stricter. Let's say, CDC says masks are just not necessarily ever anymore. I mean, we kind of came close to that, and with the announcement they made this week, we could still require masks if we wanted to, but we've just, people have to agree as part of registration to comply with any health and safety. And we just keep monitoring, what's happening and what CDC is saying and what the local, jurisdictions are saying. And we plan to have a meeting that is following those guidelines, but we really want to give people as much freedom as possible, because we know they want to be together, drink together, party together, so it's balancing that. How do we keep people safe and make sure they're still able to have the experience that they want to have?
Yeah, I think for us, it's a lot of the similar things. What's really interesting is the change. When we were planning our show last November, and we were planning on doing it, right up until we were told we couldn't, right? I think most shows were. But the health and safety guidelines were always top of the page, top of the marketing, top of everything. This is what we're doing to keep you safe. I think a lot of that's changed, where it's no longer in your face, this is what we're doing. It's just a given that we're going to be doing something. It's part of our messaging, but it's not the predominant piece anymore. We can go back to messaging why you want to come to the trade show, what you're going to see at the event, why you want to come to Vegas for the week. And again, we did a really great survey through Freeman, actually, with our audience, and 3/4 of our audience is saying, just do what the city is saying. Either we don't care about the rules at all and we're good with whatever, or just do what the city is suggesting, the city and the venue. And I think, for us, not till November, it gives us a little bit of time to really make decisions about what we're going to do, which is helpful for us. But we're really planning on doing that. We're going to follow, obviously, whatever the CDC, the city, the venue is requiring. I don't know that we're going to go much more beyond that, partly because of who our audience is and what they're asking for from us. and also because that just might be good enough at this point. You know, by the time we get to November, that might be where we should be anyway.
Yeah, and both of you are chair of really important industry organizations, Mark with Matzo and you with PCMA. Just on, not behalf of those organizations, but with that lens on what you're hearing from the membership there, does it sort of mirror what you've shared with us today? Is it, what you're sharing sort of on, not behalf of the industry, but those sentiments
I'll say
in line?
On the trade show side, I think it is, trade shows are starting in earnest at some point this summer. Yeah. And I think depending on where you are in that, it's kind of like a racetrack, right? Everybody's getting ready and you line up behind the car in front of you. Depending on where you are, you have different concerns, right? If you're in June, July, and you've already had to make a lot of these decisions, it's a lot more nerve-wracking than I am in November. Yeah. Because people are trying to figure out what it's going to look like and how it's going to work. But for the most part, all of the major trade shows are going through the same thing. We want to make sure that we're providing a good enough experience to explain to the buyers why they need to be there. Because if the buyers are there, the exhibitors will want to be there. They'll want to take part in the experiences. It's not an association-based experience, right? It's an exhibitor-driven experience, so they feel part of it. They have the ownership of it, and that the buyers can understand what they're doing as part of that experience. And I think that's really where most of the major trade shows are coming from at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's pretty similar on the, more education-focused meetings as well. I mean, everyone's in the same boat, trying to figure out where things are going to be at whatever month they're in. And if you're June, July, it's a little harder than if you're September, October, November. I think most people are taking the hybrid approach. I think there are some organizations that are opting to stay virtual this year simply from a cost perspective, or they're just doing it face-to-face for a smaller crowd. But everyone, we internally there was a request like, can we put together best practices for hybrid? And we're like, well, we can, but they don't exist yet, right? Because we're just like we were figuring it all out for virtual last year, we're figuring it all out for hybrid now. So I think, everyone's at a different place, and it depends so much on who your audience is and what they're ready for, because there's some people whose audiences are like, we should have been meeting back in January, and there's others who are just more conservative. And, we, I think, tend to be fairly conservative because particularly of who we serve, but, we have a membership that, or an audience that's really ready to get back to being in person. So I think we're all just, figuring it out as we go along and leaning on each other a lot.
Yeah, I think that's key, and I'll speak on the Matzo side. I'm sure PCMA is the same way. We've seen a lot more engagement from other people that we haven't necessarily seen come to our, now they're all online meetups, but, we call them Matzo meetups, right? Every month, and we have people get together and we just kind of talk. There's a lot more of the camaraderie and commiserating and exchanging ideas from, there's always like that core group of people who are always part of those, but you're seeing more and more people come to those and try to learn more and ask more questions and figure out what to do and offer more advice. I'm sure PCMA is seeing the same thing.
Absolutely.
But that's really been a huge thing, I think, for our industry specifically moving forward, is it's helped create more of a reason for our industry to be getting together and meeting and sharing ideas together, which has been great.
The transparency that and honesty that I've seen over the last year plus within our industry, I've never seen before in my career. I mean, it's just sort of like been no holds barred, like this is what we're dealing with, here's our situation, how are you handling this? And we literally have gotten each other through this.
Totally.
Right?
And nothing's recorded, so say whatever you want.
Right.
We're all friends here, but we can we'll help each other get through all of this. And I think we're all seeing that at this point, which I think is really good for our industry, forgetting our individual shows. The industry in general, I think it's good that we're actually seeing that we're able to help each other, and there's no competition there, right? It's all a matter of figuring out how to move the whole industry forward and do what's best for everybody.
Yeah, it's been one of the silver linings for sure.
Yeah, I mean, not a lot of positives to pull out of a pandemic. But for me, that's been a part I found really endearing, is the way the industry has sort of banded together, whether it's on the advocacy side to make sure that governments are aware of the important part our industry plays in the economy and people's lives, or like you're talking about, just sort of the transparent share of best practices. Here's what I'm going through. Well, thank you all. That was absolutely wonderful. And I think it goes without saying that these were incredibly valuable insights and exactly why we chose the two of you to be here today. So thank you for that. It looks like you all are heading into this next chapter with strategy and innovation, leading the way and setting an example for our industry. And I know the viewers who are watching will think the same thing, and I know they learned a lot, because I certainly know that I have. So Josh Haynie here, signing off from the Freeman Broadcast Studio in DC for this edition of Inside Live. Thank you.